The Knicks are playing at a 56-win pace over their last 20 games. So why does it not quite feel like they're an elite team even after a dominant weekend? We're getting into that next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. I am Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. And if you want to make sure that we're part of your daily routine, be sure to hit subscribe on either your podcast platform or YouTube, and make sure to auto download or notify you about new episodes. That's a little bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your podcast platform. But Gavin, a couple great wins over. Well, okay, depending on who you talk to, great wins. I don't know. I was actually out on Friday night, so I didn't watch the game live. And all I know is I was looking at Twitter and people were acting like the sky was falling, that the Knicks beat the Wizards. Because Kuzma had a really good game, which, I mean, you know, Kuzma's not exactly my favorite player. And I don't necessarily love the fact that he had 40 points, but I don't think that he necessarily got it super easy. And they made Porzingis' life pretty hard. So I don't know. I felt pretty good about that one. I certainly felt good about the Detroit win. However, we were talking about it before we started recording. These two wins and the way the Knicks have been playing lately, you did a little calculation before the show. They're at a 56-win pace over their last 20 games. I think it's 14 out of 20, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 14-6. Yep.
Yeah, and you know, the talent is really shining through lately, I think. But I do think there is something to be said for this team doesn't quite feel there yet as like an elite team, even if the talent is really starting to find their way with Brunson, with Randle, both looking like all-stars, RJ finding his way back from his finger horror show injury, and, you know, Grimes and Quickley really finding their groove. We'll certainly talk about Quickley more in the second segment, but what do you think right now is kind of holding them back from being a true like elite team right now?
Yeah, so I think it's a fascinating question, right? Because the stats say they are an elite team, right? They're top 3 in net rating now over the last month and a half. We mentioned that 56-win pace over their last 20 games. You flip the result of the Bulls and the Mavs game, and you could say again, like, odds are like the Mavs game was an astronomical occurrence. The Bulls game was just a terrible breakdown. And if you're 16-4, then you get to do the same thing and multiply that by 4, and you're at a 64-win pace all of a sudden, which would be crazy, or even maybe 65 wins, yeah, something like that. But that plus just how dominant they've been, again, is indicative of a team that is quote unquote on paper. Like if it was more of a blind resume and you didn't know who was on the team, you didn't know who the coach was, you didn't know any other context, you would say, oh, that's a finals contender. They're playing like a final. Like it's like, it's not totally dissimilar from what the Celtics did last year, except for the fact that the Celtics had an even crazier net rating. And if you actually get to look who's on the roster, you say Jason Tatum, MVP candidate, Jalen Brown, all NBA caliber player, role players up and down the roster that are absolutely elite. Excuse me. And the Knicks still don't have that top end talent. But honestly, even as I say that, Alex, and I'll throw this back at you, it feels hard to say that with any kind of certainty when Jalen Brunson, since January 1st, I think now is second in the NBA behind only Joel Embiid in points per game, or at least going to the Pistons game he was. And then he dropped, the Pistons game, and then he dropped 27. Randle, second or first 40 and 15 game on the Knicks since Patrick Ewing. Like, they're playing like all NBA caliber talent. So even if they're third team all NBA guys, and look, it's a while out, like, and there's so much competition at the point guard spot, in particular that Brunson's going to have to literally play at this pace for the rest of the year to even garner like distant consideration for that. All that is to say, like, I don't know, like, is this a team that could make some noise in the playoffs?
I don't know. I think it ultimately comes down to execution. And I still have my questions about if Tibbs is going to be able to guide them that far. Like, obviously, the baseline is fantastic. And that's what we've given Tibbs the most credit for over the last number of months is like he has gotten this team to this point, and it started back in 20 to 21. And then last year, obviously, was a hiccup kind of across the board. And he and Randle both kind of leaned into some of their worst tendencies. And now this year, we're starting to see some of their best tendencies come out again in the sense of like Randle is playing super efficient, super engaged. He's playing defense again. And maybe is sort of a lot of times they say players are a reflection of the coach. I wonder if the coach is kind of becoming a reflection of the players, sort of in this, where Tibbs is starting to reward hard work a little more. Like Immanuel Quickley is not having to, like put out his cup and beg for a few minutes here and there on the bench anymore. Like he's able to just kind of count on like, okay, I think I'm gonna be playing like 20 to 25 to maybe even close to 30 minutes in this game. And we even saw like he was going to have Quickley in there for RJ down the stretch of this game. Quickly, and Grimes out there as well. But like those two out there and have RJ on the bench down the stretch of the one game. So, he's taking more chances. And like I mentioned this before we started recording to you too, like unprovoked, he has started using Obi and Randle together at times again. He did that in the Detroit game today, which was great to see. And I think did it for a quick spell in the Wizards game as well, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's like he's doing the bare minimum, it feels like, but it does still feel like late game execution. And especially once they get into like lead guarding mode, the Knicks don't generally have a great plan, and they don't have like a great like run the clock out offense. Like they operate pretty quickly where they want to, get a shot off fairly fast sometimes, or sometimes at different points during the game, like early on, sometimes they actually have a somewhat clock running offense that results in a good shot, but they just like forget how to do that down the stretch and lean into ISOing. And ISOing has always kind of been Tibbs's favorite form of offense. I think he's very much like a down the stretch of a game, let me just trust my horses to run, like I'm going to have these guys just do their thing. And I think that any NBA team, not just the Knicks, needs sort of a gentler touch down the stretch of like, no, let's have a real game plan rather than just like, let's put it in guys' hands and let, the chips fall. And I don't know for sure if Tibbs is ready to do that yet, or if he'll ever be ready to do that, because honestly, he is who he is at this point. I think he set them up with a great baseline. I think he actually, surprisingly, and maybe he's been giving more, input to other guys now, but on his staff. But I think the offense has looked a lot better than it's looked his entire tenure in recent weeks and recent months this season. But I do still question if he would be the guy that could lead the Knicks past anything more than just like a first round berth this year again. Especially considering they'll probably go in as a 6 or 5 seed unless they can keep up this torrid pace that they're on right now and maybe sneak into the 4 again. But either way, they're going to have a tough matchup waiting for them in the first round, no matter where they fall, because the top of the East is absolutely stacked this year.
Yeah, Alex, I have some more thoughts, and I think maybe I'm just in a good mood this weekend, but I'm feeling kind of forgiving towards Tom Thibodeau, and I want to give him a little credit. But first, I gotta help all of you make some money, because that's look, number one priority is to tell you about the Knicks. Number two priority is tell you about cool places you can go to do sportsy games and have some fun and make some money doing so. And the number one spot for that is PrizePicks. So tonight I am taking Julius Randle. Well, yeah, tonight or this afternoon, I guess I should say. I'm taking Julius Randle to continue his hot streak over 27 points. I am taking Jalen Brunson to have more than 6.5 assists. And I am taking Immanuel Quickley. He's due for a big 3-point shooting night, over 3.5 3-pointers made. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people, just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you can watch. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, and they offer safe and fast withdrawals. And you can play pretty much anywhere, over 30 states and in Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code Locked On and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Alex. So here's my counter on that. And maybe I haven't done a good enough job making this point, but NBA late game offenses, like, and this is not to say other teams don't have more spice than the Knicks do, right? There's more creativity, there's more off ball stuff. Like some teams have really good out of bounds plays. The Knicks maybe have every once in a while, but usually the rule of thumb, even in modern basketballs, is spread it out and give it to your best guy. And I think a lot of the Knicks issues has been like their best guys, as good as Jalen Brunson is, as good as Julius Randle is, generally the teams they lose to have better best guys, right? Whether it's Luka Doncic, whether it's Jason Tatum, whether it's Giannis, whether it's Harden and Embiid, the Knicks' best players have usually gotten outdueled, and that forces you defensively to contort and twist and trap and push yourself to the breaking point to slow down these superstars, and inevitably that sets up role guys to like a George Niang on that Christmas Day game to have the performance of a lifetime. Or, I mean, you could even look at the Bucks, like whether it was Drew Holiday or Joe Ingles, and like over and over again, not that Drew Holiday is a role player, but over and over again, those guys were killing you because the Knicks were doing everything possible to shut down Giannis and honestly doing a fantastic job of it. So that's not on Tibbs. That's just sort of the reality of the Knicks roster. And again, that's not to say like there isn't things he can do better. And I think in particular, what has killed them so many times is the combination of that lack of top end talent, and the fact that he's been playing guys so many minutes that you have stars that are already at a slight deficit and then they're exhausted, and then it gets really hard to execute against defenses that are completely locked in and fighting for their lives. And you get these, I mean, like we had in full against the Wizards, where the Knicks were up by 10 with 3 minutes to go off of the great Julius Randle bucket. And it got to like the Wizards, like, I guess they never had the ball like within one possession because they just got the Kuzma 3 free throws. And then Jalen Brunson came back and hit his free throws, but closer than you'd want. And in the Pistons game, like, not that they were ever really in danger of losing, but they kind of like played with their food a little bit. And it's the NBA, like as people insist on telling me in the comments section, Alex, there's no bad losses, but I understand the frustration. I understand why it would give you some hesitancy. And I'm curious, one, like how you think that will translate into the playoffs where like they're going against better defense. So they're going against those stars game in and game out. If there's a reason for doubt, I think it's that. And two, I mean, just maybe we can get into this weekend's games a little, like how the Knicks sort of turned that around just because Brunson and Randle played like just about as well as anyone in the NBA can play in these last 2 games.
Yeah, I think 2 things stand out to me. I'll say first off, since you just mentioned it, the minutes allotment. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that can be attributed to some of the occasional like late game foibles that the Knicks have here. Like even against the Pistons, it's hard to blame them for letting their foot off the gas a little and letting the Pistons get within whatever the closest they were was, like 5 points,
yeah,
3 points, whatever it was.
it was 76-70, I think. I mean, obviously that was, but maybe even later they got closer.
Yeah. Whatever the closest the Pistons got, where it was closer than they should have been at any given point, given the fact that we're talking about one of the worst teams in the league that was without like 3 or 4 of their best players in this game. I mean, there's really no excuse for it being close at all at any point. But you look then, and it's like, well, against this essentially super G League team, if we're being completely honest, that they were playing in the Pistons in this one without Cade, without Bogdanovich, etc., without Duran, their high pick this year. Like you have Julius Randle playing 40 minutes, Brunson playing 42, Grimes playing 37 and a half, Mitch playing 34, Quickley playing 34, RJ playing 26 and a half, which was actually somewhat low, but then only 3 other guys getting minutes. And it's Hartenstein at 11 and a half, Obi at 9 and a half, and Deuce at 4 and a half, which seems super low. I mean, it's like, no wonder these guys are starting to lose steam at the end of games because they're tired, like even the best athletes in the world, and the way it's not even just that, it's the way that the shifts occur so often with Tibbs, where it'll be like, okay, you get your normal rest maybe in the third quarter, but then you're going to play like the whole fourth quarter plus a little bit at the end of the third. And it's just such a long shift to expect someone to continue to be able to make shots and play high level basketball at without having any sort of reprieve. So again, especially against a team that is, quite frankly, even at full strength, not in the Knicks league, but then at not even half strength is well below the, anyone that should be competing with the Knicks. Like, you shouldn't have to play Randle 40 minutes, even if he's playing like an absolute monster in the game. You shouldn't have to play Brunson 42 minutes in that game. And yet they did. So that's one thing. The other thing, as far as the late game execution, I'm kind of with you. Like, you do generally see teams go to their guys late and have them generate shots. And that is how the NBA works, obviously. My big issue is that the Knicks switch into that way too early. And that's always been the problem, I feel like, the last couple of years, and that's why they blow so many leads, is that they'll be like midway through the third quarter and then be like, okay, time to switch into, I made this analogy when I had Drew Steele on last week when we did the one game recap. Like, they switch into like an NFL team that's up by 10 midway through the third and then says, okay, we're just going to run the ball now, like time to play it safe. And then inevitably they get stonewalled a few times and then the other team comes back and wins the game. I think that happens to the Knicks too often, where they switch into that too early, whereas they have a great offense earlier in the game that then just doesn't get a chance to show up again. Because I think that it's a lot harder to then switch back after you've already switched into like ISO mode to end the game. I think it's a lot harder to then be like, wait, no, never mind. Let's go back to running a cohesive offense again, because then you've already got these guys thinking like, okay, it's time to go get my shot now. It's time to run clock out. It's time to, make this last as long as possible and then just score late in the game. And that also tires guys out more too, because it puts more burden on them. So it's like a multifold problem, but one that hopefully they can solve. I mean, I will give Tibbs credit for doing some different stuff this year, whether it's just to save his job or not. He has kind of changed his approach a little bit, and it's worked obviously quite well with the Knicks playing as well as they have over the last 20 games. And, being this far above 500 at this point in the season is quite literally unheard of for the last 10 years since the 2012 to 13 team. So, I think he deserves at this point, as much as you and I are both well on record saying that he's not the coach that's going to eventually bring the Knicks where they want to go, which is like being a true contender. I think he's at least earned the latitude to serve out the rest of this year and see where it goes. But I do think, as much as it would be a decision that would make a lot of people very angry, the Knicks should at least start considering the possibility of looking at a coach that would be that next step level coach as soon as this offseason, if the talent continues to shine like this. And, they continue to show not necessarily full cracks in the armor, but at least like signs of cracks in the armor. And especially if they have a very underwhelming playoffs again, I think it would be pretty telling.
Yeah, and I think the best thing the Knicks could do at this point with how well they're playing is not give Tibbs an excuse. And I guess he'll always have one, in the sense that the Knicks are extremely unlikely to have the best player in their first round series. And I guess the only way that's not true is if they make a run all the way up to the 2 or 3 seed, which seems unlikely, but you could look at it right now. 2 games behind the Cavs for 5th, 2.5 behind the Sixers for 4th, 2.5 behind the Bucks for 3rd, 3 behind the KD-less Nets for 2nd. It's not impossible. Mm-hmm. I think it's unlikely, because all those teams have MVP candidates. If you want to consider Donovan Mitchell an MVP candidate, and the Knicks don't, but I don't know, crazier things have happened. But assuming they get into a playoff series where they're outgunned in terms of star talent, the reason they're going to win is because of their depth. And to me, even though you saw, at least against the Wizards, like Grimes not have a great shooting game. And like, obviously Obi is kind of a shell of what he was at the beginning of the season. And that's, I mean, that's a podcast in and of himself. What's going on with Obi Toppin right now? It's not good. It's not good with Obi Toppin right now. But guys, with how well Quickley's playing, and we'll get more into that in just a sec. I think there's a window there if you can add one more piece off the bench. And the irony here is a guy we just got to watch last night, Alec Burks. I've seen multiple people make this point. I agree with it. He would be perfect for this team. Like they just need another wing that can create a shot and can move the ball and can hold up on defense, which is Burks to a T, but maybe they end up giving up some stuff for Eric Gordon. Maybe they look at Orlando and Terrence Ross. Like you could mention a whole bunch of candidates, and there are tons of guys we'll talk about in the coming weeks, but it's clear they need one more guy, I think, because the bench, I mean, you noted it. Like you could look at either game this weekend, but particularly the Pistons game, like there was nothing doing. I think Quickley was literally the only bench player to score in the first half against the Pistons. So that is an area they desperately need help. And if you want to say, all right, Tibbs, we gave you all the tools you needed, and you're still playing Julius Randle 42 minutes a night, that's not good. You're still playing Jalen Brunson 40 minutes a night. RJ Barrett is still at 38 minutes a night. If you go out and get that depth, then you kind of have an honest look at what Tibbs is doing. Because the danger in getting rid of Tibbs is obviously, and this is kind of devil's advocate because I'm generally on the same page with you, is that like you lose some of the good stuff. And there's a lot of really good stuff right now. But before we get into that, Alex, can you tell people about some really good stuff they can eat?
Yeah, well, maybe I could recommend this to the Knicks too. If you're feeling a little tired, Knicks players, after Tibbs has you on your 40th out of 42nd minute of the night, maybe go eat a Built Bar on the bench because they are a delicious treat, but don't have all the fat and calories of some other delicious treats. You gotta try a Built Bar. And we just got through the holidays. My goal is to eat a little healthier this year. I'm trying to work out more, get back in shape, and drop a few pounds. And everybody always does that, but I'm gonna try to stick to it. And Built Bar makes it pretty easy to stick to it because I can feel like I'm cheating on my diet by eating this delicious candy bar looking thing that tastes like a candy bar and feels like a candy bar and chews like a candy bar and everything else. But it is not, in fact, a candy bar. It is a Built Bar. But just like candy bars, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and my personal favorite, coconut almond, which tastes just like an Almond Joy. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And they're good for you because they have 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar, which is not a ton compared to a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now the good news is you don't have to wait around to get some if you want to get some Built Bars. We've been talking about ordering Built Bars from Built.com for years, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to the Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. Of course, if you want to get them online as well and maybe order in bulk, you can always go to built.com. All right, Gavin, we're back for our third segment here. And I'm going to throw this to you because I know that you wanted to give an ode to Immanuel Quickley and his play in these 2 games over the weekend. I also have some stuff to add, but I want to let you lead things off because, yeah, it was well, you know what? Here, I'll take
For it.
I'll take my moment to just give the stats first.
I'd love to hear it.
So against Detroit on Sunday, 17 points, 6 of 13 shooting, 3 of 6 from deep for Quickley. Also had 3 boards and 3 assists. And then versus Washington on Friday night, he has 18 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 7 of 13 overall, only 1 of 4 from 3. But Gavin, I think, we were talking about it before the show. A lot of what made this weekend from Quickley so impressive was that the 3-point shot was not a necessity to make him, useful on the court. Or I guess it wasn't an active detriment to his offense, say on Friday night, that he wasn't really making as many threes because he was just so good at everything else. And perhaps that is why we have now seen in a report from Mark Stein the other day that apparently the Knicks are still receiving calls about Quickley, but now are starting to say a little more on the side of, we are not interested in dealing this guy because he is very good and we want to keep him and he's part of our team now. To which I'm like, good, glad it only took this most recent stretch of awesome play for them to come to that conclusion, but I'm glad to hear that does apparently seem to be the direction that they're leaning now at this point.
Yeah, and we're gonna have a Hoops Hype Michael Scotto on Wednesday, I believe, to talk more about the Quickley stuff. So that is really, really good and really exciting. And it's all good news on the Immanuel Quickley front. But yeah, I mean, look, like, I mean, do you remember like his rookie year? That this was a guy who we were like, wow, he's an incredible shooter, but he is literally afraid to take a layup, and on it, he wasn't capable of taking layups in the NBA. He was not slow, but he wasn't explosive enough.
He was
didn't jump.
frail.
He didn't jump high enough yet. He was frail. Yeah. And
Mhm.
he couldn't take, I mean, he drew a lot of fouls on the perimeter, couldn't really generate contact at the rim. And couldn't finish through even just people going straight up on him. Like he was bouncing off them and he had no chance in the world. And now he is a heat seeking missile in transition. He is trying to bump into people. He is trying to generate contact. Man, I'm going to tell you, there was a one play in the Wizards game that got me so fired up when he just went right into Corey Kispert's chest for an and one. I was like, this is a different dude. This is a different human being than he's been in the past. We had the same thing on Kyle Kuzma. We had the Euro and he just hit like this off balance, like kind of like half layup, like half floater over him. It was just in the mix, I think, for my favorite offensive game of the year for him. And you throw that in with just the still like the basketball IQ with the greater athleticism. Like the play that summed that up to me was he had one where this was like a little after the first layup he had against the Wizards, where he's going up the court and he did kind of the like MJ on like the all-time Knicks dunk that he had, where he was dribbling, and if you're on YouTube you can see this, and then he just looks the other way, whole defense freezes, and speeds in for a layup. He had maybe my favorite pass of his on the year, where RJ hit him on a cut, and then he immediately like did it into like a double pump wraparound around Taj Gibson to Isaiah Hartenstein for a dunk. Like I just it's so clear that he is like, I think just literally over the last 12 games, he has gone up 2 or 3 levels as a player. And I don't know, Alex, if we did the young players rankings the other day, I had him 4th. I might have him 2nd after this weekend. That's how good this weekend was to me. Small sample size, theater galore, but he just seems so in control. And it seems like his physical capabilities have finally matched his mental capabilities.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, I think another thing to point out, everything you said about him taking layups, totally 100%. And I think that is the biggest thing that has changed with him. And also just the way that he uses his particular athletic gifts now is different. Like he used to use his stop start ability to get guys on his hip and then draw a foul or whatever. Now he's just like, he just uses the start ability and less of the stop ability and uses that to just get straight to the rim. And he's developed such a good up and under game that, he's now able to sort of take that little like step to the side and get a lefty layup or get an under the basket layup, as he's coming baseline or whatever, and do it so well. The other thing though that I will say is that I think we're seeing a return of one of his staples from his rookie year, which has been up and down since then, which is the floater. And I've been noticing, I don't know if this is just something that I'm noticing that he's been doing for a minute or what, but these 2 games, having watched them basically in like in succession of one another today, because I recorded the game Friday night, like I feel like is putting less on the floater now and making it less that it has to be a perfect like rainbow swoosh at this point, and is starting to sort of, I don't want to say line drive it, but put it in such a way. It reminds me a lot of how Brunson sort of approaches.
Can I
that
throw this
swoosh.
out there? It's kind of
Yeah.
similar to where RJ's having
Yeah.
success when he shoots it like a little bit
Mhm.
shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. Shorter and like with less arc on it because he's
Yeah.
letting the rim act as like a helper. Like as long as I shoot this straight at this, even if it's not perfectly into the hoop, it'll just kind of lightly tap around on the rim there and then eventually find its way in. And I feel like he's been getting a lot more of those lately. Um, which, he still has his occasional like baseline one where he just hits a perfect little rainbow, but the straight on ones, I think he's really starting to perfect that art form again. And again, maybe learning from RJ, maybe learning some from Brunson, who Brunson somehow does that on his jumpers too, where he just has the softest touch humanly possible and gets it to bounce around on the rim and eventually just plop its way in after like 4 bounces. But yeah, I love everything with Quickley right now, and he's still defending his butt off. Like, I mean, he's going to be a 25 to 30 minute per game player the rest of the year, I feel like, unless something drastically changes. And I can't really see anything drastically changing. I gotta. We haven't really touched on Brunson and Julius as much yet in the show, but gotta like basically shout both of them out for the fact that they both kind of individually won the Knicks each of the 2 games. Brunson against the Wizards goes for 34 on 12 of 24 shooting, 3 of 6 from 3, 7 of 7 from the free throw line, 8 boards, 8 assists, just absolutely dynamic, awesome superstar performance from him. He really put the team on his back late when they needed him to. It wasn't Randle's absolute best game in this one, so it was really, there was a lot more impetus on Brunson to sort of carry this one across the finish line, and he did, especially considering the Knicks had a little bit of a hard time dealing with some of the officiating and the foul calls that were coming against them down the stretch as well. But also Brunson in these 2 games too, just especially came through in the Pistons game, but just putting his body on the line time after time after time and drawing charge after charge after charge. Never gets old seeing that happen when a guy's like, oh, got this. And then he's like, oh, nope, never mind. Brunson is under me somehow and like completely in my way, and also got his feet down perfectly in like a split second. I don't know how he does it. But then Randle in the Pistons game, not to be outdone on a 24 shot performance, manages to get 42 on 24 shots, shooting 15 of 24 from the field, 4 of 7 for 3, and 8 of 8 from the free throw line, along with 15 boards and 4 assists. I mean, he was just not even a man among boys. He was like a monster among men in the Pistons game, just going absolutely bonkers. He couldn't be stopped. He just bullied the crap out of those poor kids. I mean, it's mostly kids that were playing. It's like young players on the Pistons with no Bogdanovich and all that. Shout out to Julius for that game too. I don't know, that there's not too much more to say. When they're at their best, I feel like everybody knows what their best looks like at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of had the same thought where I was like, all right, like how are we going to frame this uniquely with Brunson and Randle? I was like, you really can't. Like they're both incredible shot makers. I mean, Brunson had one, I think it was the Pistons game. They kind of blend together, but like he had a turnaround fadeaway off one leg, and it was a little bit of a Dirk fade. And he just threw it up, and it was like, and it was a shot. If your friend took, you'd be like, all right, that's totally BS. You didn't mean to do that. Like, shut up. Like, stop bragging about that. And he just, but with Brunson, it's like, oh, he's probably practiced that 20,000 times in his life, and of course, it's swished in like that. And that sort of summed up the 2 games for me for Brunson. I mean, the manipulation, but even more than like his manipulation and his footwork, his touch is just extraordinary. And it was and Randle. It was like I don't really have that many comments. I'm totally with you. Like it was not a fair matchup against the Pistons. He belonged in a if there's a league above the NBA and or maybe the Pistons should be in a league below the NBA this iteration. Anyways, that's not even a shot at them. Like they have a fantastic future. Like you could argue you would take their future over the Knicks with Cade, with Duran, with how good Ivy looks, with how good Killian Hayes looks. So not a shot at you, weird Pistons fan who's still listening 35 minutes in this episode. I don't know why you'd be doing that. But anyways, finally, Alex, I wanted to shout out Mitchell Robinson real quick. I know not a perfect 2-game stretch for him, and statistically, like not really like a monster performance in either game, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of you'll appreciate this reference. I don't know if anyone else watching will, but like Smart Hulk in the Avengers, where he's like, yeah, to match the brain with the brawn. Like Mitch is matched like the athleticism with the strength with the IQ for the most part, and the results I think are fantastic. I mean, some of the shots he got to over these 2 games, and particularly in the Wizards game, it was his 3rd block of the game where he had it was, oh my God, what's his name on the Wizards? Their point guard who was a Jordan Goodwin, who's a second round pick. And Mitch, when Goodwin gathered, was on the opposite side. He was outside of the paint on the left side. Goodwin was laying it up on the right side outside the paint, and Mitch somehow got there to block it without goaltending. And then he had that big like power dribble and jam, which you always see him try, and he always seems to miss the dunk on. But this time he got it to go. Had a seal for a bucket really early against the Pistons. I still want more, but I love this version of Mitchell Robinson, and he's been looking so good defensively these last few games.
Yeah, I actually want to touch on Mitch briefly too for my last point, which is just like, let the man play defense. My God, these refs, like the Wizards game in particular, was just comical. The stuff that they were calling on him. There was a hilarious point where I don't know if MSG did this intentionally, but it was late in the game, and it was after Randle made a big layup against Kuzma. Then Kuzma drew the foul against Mitch on the other end. And it was almost the exact same play where Randle drove in, had to kind of put his body into Kuzma a little bit, but Kuzma like stood his ground, but also was clearly like making an advance towards, like leaning his body towards Randle, whatever, and didn't get called for a foul, even though he directly put his body while moving in between Randle and the hoop. Did not get called for a foul. Randle finishes through it. Cool. Kuzma on the other end goes directly at Mitch, who, yes, was moving a little bit, but kept himself more straight up and down than Kuzma had on the other end. And then Kuzma misses the shot, and Mitch gets called for a foul for the exact same thing that Kuzma had not gotten called for a foul for on the other side. And he winds up fouling out because of it. Earlier in the game, too, he played some masterful one-on-one defense against Porzingis that got called a foul for absolutely no reason. Where he just he did exactly what you should do, where Porzingis was on the block and was switching left, right, whatever, like over and over and over again, trying to like pivot Mitch out of his shoes, but Mitch was really not budging. And in fact, like just kind of each time that Porzingis would give him an inch, Mitch would take it and step into the space, which you're allowed to do as a defender. Like you're allowed to work your way into space that the player on offense gives you, and then use that to try to keep them away from the hoop. Like that's literally defense in basketball. And yet he just stood there, arms up in front of Porzingis the entire time. And then Porzingis just kind of like flailed and got a foul call for no good reason, even though Mitch had his hands up and didn't make the whole thing is you have to like make a move forward towards the ball for it to count as a foul. If you just stand there arms straight up and you're just defending in that way, should not be a foul against you. And yet they still called it a foul against him. So I don't know. He got a real bad rap in that Wizards game. Let Mitch defend, NBA refs. Come on. Like if you're going to let other teams have play more physical styles of defense, then, let the Knicks do it too. I don't know. So that's my final rant. Anyway, this has been a good weekend recap, weekend update, as it were, if we want to make this like SNL.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening, and we will have a MLK Day recap, and then, as Gavin said, we have a interview with Michael Scotto of
Hoops
Hype, my mistake, coming up on Wednesday for some trade season updates, which I'm sure will be heating up in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. But till next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out.